Hi, grade 11s. Hi, everyone. Hello, 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 hello. My name is Izel Sitole, the cat teacher. Welcome, you guys. Right, so in today's lesson, let's see who's here. Okay. In today's lesson, we are going to look at the function countif and the function SUMIF. This is not your first time learning about these functions, so this is a revision, right? So if it's your first time, then okay, it's fine, but I think this is not the first time you are learning about the COUNTIF and SUMIF. Right, so hi Boucher, hi Boucher. Hello Boucher, how are you Boucher? I hope you're fine. So Boucher, in today's lesson, we are looking at the COUNTIF and the SUMIF functions. Sbashe, welcome. Right, so Sbashe, because you just came in, today's lesson, Bashe, is based on the COUNTIF and the SUMIF functions. Right, my name is Izel Sitole, the cat teacher, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Now, what about the SUM and COUNTIF functions? Let's find out. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain what a SUMIF and the COUNTIF functions is. So what the SUMIF and COUNTIF functions are. You will be able to explain how these functions work. Right? You will be able to use these two functions. You'll be able to use the SUMIF and the COUNTIF functions to solve problems in Excel. All right, so the COUNTIF functions. The COUNTIF function counts the number of cells that meet a criterion. For example, let's say you want to count the number of times a particular city appears in a customer list. So the COUNTIF function will help you with counting the number of times a particular text is appearing on a list. So for an example, I have this spreadsheet for sales, right? So with the COUNTIF function, I can use the COUNTIF function to count the number of times, to count how many times did Smith use the service, or I can count how many times does Smith or William's name is appearing from this list. So I can use the COUNTIF function to count how many times does William's name appear on the list. So the COUNTIF function counts how many times a text appears on a list. All right, like I have said, I can use the COUNTIF function to calculate how many times Smith appears on the list, or Johnson, how many times Johnson appears on the list. Right, so I can use the COUNTIF function. I can use the COUNTIF function to count how many times does this text appears from this list. So the quarter one, I can count how many times quarter one appears on this column by using the function if. Right, so with the the SUMIF function, the COUNTIF counts the number of cells that meets a criterion. For example, the number of times a particular text appears in a list. So I have made an example for this one. Now the SUMIF function. The SUMIF function. This one lets you sum in one range based on a specific criterion you look for in another range. This means that you can use the values in a range to modify the values in another range. Right, let me try and give you guys an example of this one. An example. So I have this spreadsheet that has it has service providers and the cost. Okay, so this person, so sale number 1, MTN that costs 10 Rand was purchased. Vodacom was also purchased. Okay, so Vodacom 15 Rand was purchased. Salsi 15 Rand was purchased. So if I were to use the Countif function on this one to calculate how many times Vodacom was bought, how many times does Vodacom appear on this list? How many times was Vodacom bought? Let's see. Oops. Okay. So Vodacom was bought 3 times. 1, 2, 3. 3, I can use the Countif function to count how many times did these people buy the airtime for Vodacom. So 3 times, I can use the Countif function to count how many times Vodacom was bought. And then I can use the SUMIF function to count how many times was Vodacom, to count the amount. See, Vodacom was bought 3 times. I can use the SUMIF function to count the total of Vodacom. The total. So the SUMIF, with the SUMIF, I can use the SUMIF function to calculate how many times, to calculate the total of sales for the provider Vodacom, the total. So I can count how many times and the amount that was received for Vodacom. So for Vodacom was bought 3 times, so 15, 15, and 15. I can use the count, I can use the SUMIF function to calculate. I can use the SUMIF function to help me look for Vodacom from the list, look for Vodacom and count and find the total received for Vodacom. So on this day, Vodacom was bought 3 times. Vodacom was bought 3 times. 3 times. Now I want to find the total for Vodacom. So I can use the SUMIF function. So the SUMIF function will look at this, will count Vodacom 3 times and then collect everything. 15 Rand for Vodacom, 15 Rand again for Vodacom, and 15 Rand for Vodacom. So it will look for Vodacom and then find a total only for Vodacom. Right, so that's how the SUMIF function is used. It lets you sum in one range based on a specific criterion you look for in another range. This means that you can use the values in a range to modify the values in another range. Right, so here, let me repeat. I repeat, with the SUMIF function, I can look on this range. Now I want to find the total for Vodacom. Vodacom, Vodacom, and Vodacom. Can use the SUMIF function to add all the Vodacom cost. So I can add this 15 Rand with this 15 Rand and this 15 Rand, only for Vodacom. So I can use the sum if function to find the total that was spent or bought for the provider Vodacom. So Vodacom on this day, this person bought 15 Rand airtime for Vodacom, and Vodacom 15 Rand for, and another 15 Rand for Vodacom. So if I were to use the sum if function, then I would find a total of 45 Rand. So sum if we look at this range and then only collect the amounts that are there for Vodacom, because I want only the amounts for Vodacom. Right, let's see. The Countif function. The Countif function. So now guys, let me ask you, are you experiencing any problems with these two functions? How good are you with using these two functions? Do you understand these functions, or you have a problem using these functions? Do you understand these functions or you don't? I'm waiting for your responses. Bahle, buhle. Do you have any problems with the Countif function and the SUMIF function? Please let me know. Let's see. Faiza, I don't know if I say your name correctly, but Faiza is saying, please forgive me if this is not the way I should say your name. Please forgive me. So says, no ma'am, thanks. Sbasha says no. Right, that's good. Bushe says yes. Okay, so Bushe, with the count if function, I can use the count if function just to calculate, or to not to calculate, but to help me with the count if function. If I use the count if function, so here is the count if function. The count if function counts the number of cells within a range that meets the given condition. If I want to calculate from this list, how many times does the word or the text, the name, the last name, William appears on the list, I can use the count if function. I want to see how many times did William use the service. How many times does William appear on the list? I can select the range. So from this range, I want to find out how many times does Williams appear. So with the count if function, Excel gives you more information with regards to this function, how to use the function, how to select the range, criteria, and everything. So you select, you must insert your count if function first, then the range. So from this list, I want to find out how many times does the word Williams appear. So the criteria is Williams, because I want to see how many times does Williams appear. So you can type Williams, Williams, close your brackets. So 4 times. Let's see if Williams appears 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the countif function is used for this. Say you want to look for something in a range. You want to find out how many times does a word appear from the list. You can use the countif. So countif counts the number of cells that contains the text that you are looking for. So you must specify which text are you looking for. So right now I was looking for Williams. So the countif function helps me with finding out how many times from this list does the word Williams appear. Okay, so with this one, you can type in the word or just select a cell that has the word that you are looking for. Can you see? All right, so this was the example of count if. Count if, yes. Count if in its simplest form, count if says, count if, where do you want to look? Count if from this list, remember the list where I found Williams. From this list, I want you to look for me. How many times does the word Williams appears on this list? So where do you want to look? Select the list. So it's equals count if, you select where do you want to look? Select the list where you want to look. And then what do you want to look for? You select the text. Now you insert the text that you want Excel or you want the countif function to help you to look for. For an example, equals countif A2 to A5. So from A2 to A5, I wanted to calculate how many times does the word London appears. So the answer, it will give me an answer of how many from this list does the word London appears. So how many times does the name of this city appear? Remember, I told you with the countif function, after selecting the list or the range where you want the countif to look for the text that you are looking for. You can select the name that you are looking for, or you can just click on a cell that has the text that you are looking for. So if London is on the cell A4, or there's many Londons, but one of them is in the cell A4, just select one of the cells. So A4 contains London. So you can say count if, then from the range or the list, then A4 is for what you are looking for. Let's go back. So now, from this list, I want to use the count if function. So count if, yes, count if, select the range. Where do you want the count if to look for the text that you are looking for? Sorry. So where do you want it to look? Let's see. So remember, count if, where do you want to look, and what do you want to look for? So what do you want the count if to look for? Where, first where, count if function, and then where, then after an example or a text that is similar to what you are looking for. So count if from this list, where, count if where, select the range, this list, the last name. So I want count if to look for Jones. So here is Jones, here is another Jones. I can see two Jones, so I select any of this Jones. So A5 contains Jones. You can say A5 and then close the bracket. There's Jones 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 Jones. So the count if function counts how many times does a text appears depending on which text you are looking for. You must select the count if function and where the list. So from this list, what then are you looking for from this list? You can select the cell that contains what you are looking for, select one of the cells, or type Jones. Let's type Jones. 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 Right. Okay. No. Don't make corrections for me. I can make corrections for myself. Let me fix this. Okay. So here is the criteria. 3. Count if where on this list what? Jones. Right. So we have 3 for Jones. Okay. Now let's move. Right, I have an activity for you guys, an activity, right? So I have this spreadsheet. I want to share this spreadsheet with you guys so that you can practice using the count if function. Okay. I want to share this with you guys. So we have 3 questions, sorry. This is where you are going to answer the first question, the second question, and the third question. Right, so I want to share this with you. I want to share. Okay. I'll copy the link and paste it on the chats. Then you copy the link or you click on the link so that you can access the document. Okay. Right. Everyone. Okay. So here is the link. Just go to my drive and find the document, download the document and practice doing this using the count if function. If you have any problem, just let me know. Right. Now, the first question. The first question is insert a function in cell E3 to determine how many sales were made by Williams. So in column A. So use the function, insert a function in cell E3 to determine how many sales were made by Williams. So in E3, in cell E3, okay. Right, so now you must use a function to determine how many sales were made by William. How many sales were made by Williams? So on this one, question 1. So on cell E3, how many sales were made by Williams? You must find out. Use the function to count how many sales were made by Williams. So to find out how many sales were made by Williams, which function are we going to use? Which function? The second question says, insert a function in cell E6 to determine how many sales were made by Jones. So I have made an example using this. So I guess it will be easy for you to answer this one because I did something with Jones. Remember, I used a function to determine how many sales were made by Jones. So insert a function in cell E6 to determine how many sales were made by Jones. Number 3, insert a function in cell E9 to determine how many sales were made in quarter 2. Right, so how many sales were made by Williams and how many sales were made by Jones? Also, how many sales were made in quarter 2? Williams, we want to find out on this column, Williams. So to find out how many sales were made by Williams, how many times does Williams appear from the list of sales? This will tell us how many times did Williams made this sales. So how many sales were made by Williams? How many sales? So William made this sale, the first sale. Second, this is his second sale. Williams made his third sale. Then here is his fourth sale. I can't count. The question says use a function. So by me counting and typing 4 in a test, I will get a 0 for this one. So to insert a function, insert a function to count the number of sales that were made by Williams. So the number of sales are 1, 2, 3, and 4. But to use a function to find out how many sales were made by Williams, or to determine how many sales were made by Williams, we need to say equals count equals count if how many sales were made by Williams. So where do we want to find out? Where is this list? Williams. Where will we find the number of list for Williams? Where is the column for sales? This is for sales, so the indication that Williams made a sale, we will find it on this column. So Williams, this is his first sale, second, third, and fourth. So now I want to calculate from this list how many times did Williams made the sales. How many sales were made by Williams? So from this list, here is the list. Then, what is it that I'm looking for? For Williams, I can select a cell that contains the word Williams, any of the cells that has Williams inside. So Williams, then close with a bracket and say enter. So it's 4 times. So 4 sales for Williams. Williams made 4 sales. Okay. So if the teacher is marking your test, in the test you are supposed to use a function to find out how many sales were made by Williams or to determine how many sales were made by Williams. The teacher will look at the function. So by seeing the function, I can see that's all right. So this child used the function. So she or he did exactly what was required of her to do. Then a mark for this one. Now we must find out how many times or how many sales were made by Jones. So how many sales were made by Jones? How many sales for Jones? For Jones, we want to count how many sales for Jones. How many sales were made by Jones equals count if. There is count if. Double click count if. Now the range, where do you want to count? Where do you want to use this function? Where do you want to find the number of sales made by Jones? So this is the list where this is where I want this function to help me calculate how many times did Jones make this way, right? So we are done with that. Count if way and what are you looking for? You want this to count for you? Count where? A2 to A15. Count what? The criteria. What? I'm looking for Jones. Select a cell that contains the text Jones and close your bracket. So Jones 3 times. Jones 3 times. Question 3. Question 3. Insert a function in cell E9 to determine how many sales were made in quarter 2. Now we want to find out how many sales were made in the second quarter, quarter 2. Now we are not looking for the person who made the sales. How many times did Jones make the sales? How many times is Jones' name appearing from the list of sales? No, we are not looking for that. Now we are looking for how many sales were made in quarter 2. Now to find how many sales were made in quarter 2. So quarter, the second quarter, can you see? This sale was made by Johnson in quarter 2. And this one as well, this one. So how many sales were made in the quarter 2? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But then I do not have to type because the instruction says insert a function. If I say 4, then I'll get a mark of 0. But if I use the function equals count if, where do you want to calculate? Select where you want. So I wanted to help me calculate how many times the sales were made in the second quarter. Quarter 2. Where? Here is the column. So from this list, I want this function to help me calculate how many times how many times, let's see the question. How many sales were made in quarter 2? So we are calculating how many sales were made in quarter 2. So where from this column, what is it that I am looking for? Remember, you can select one of the cells or just type, use a quotation mark first and then copy the text, or yes, quota space 2. Okay, then shows, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so I used the function, so my answer is correct. If I don't feel like typing in or typing quarter 2, I can choose one of the cells that contains that text I am looking for. D2 to D15 use this function to calculate how many times does this what on the cell D3 quarter 2 appears from the list. Let's see, 4. So 4 is the answer. Right, were you able to do the Countif? Were you able to use the Countif function? Let me know. Right, so now we are moving to the SUMIF function. The SUMIF function. Now with SUMIF, remember we said the SUMIF function lets you sum in one range based on a specific criterion to look for in you look for in another range. This means that you can use the values in a range to modify the values in another range. Right, so with SUMIF, let's see. Remember, now I have calculated, I have used this function to help me find out how many times did Williams made the sales. Now I can use the SUMIF function, to add the total of sales made by Williams. Remember, Williams made 4 sales. 4 sales for Williams. So here is Williams, another Williams, and Williams. So he made 4 sales. Now SUMIF can be used to calculate how many, can be used to calculate not how many times did Williams make the sales, but can add all the sales made by Williams. So it can add everything that was bought by, the sales that were made by Williams. So if Williams made this sale, 109,644. The second one is 128,438. And then the fourth one is this one. That will count how many times did Williams made the sales. But then with SUMIF can count the total of the sales made by Williams. So this one can add everything that was made by Williams. So 128,438, 147,000, 190,000. So the SUMIF can add everything that was made by Williams. So it can give a total of sales made by Williams. Countif counts how many times did Williams made the sales. This one counts the total made by Williams. So it will add everything made by Williams. If you want to add everything made by Brown, then you can use the SUMIF function. You don't have to use your pen and paper or your calculator just to add everything next to Williams. Okay, so Williams made this first sale, so 109,644 plus. You don't have to do that. You can use the sum if function. The sum if function, guys, with the grade 10s, grade 10s, if they don't understand or they want me to go back to something, they ask me, ma'am, can you please go back to the first method, or ma'am, please repeat this, ma'am, I do not understand this. It's fine, guys. If you don't understand, just let me know. I will go back to what you are, what you don't understand. I can go back and then explain. You're asking me to explain. Right, so equals sum if use the sum if function. Now the range, let's see, where do we want this to calculate from? So I wanted to calculate everything, every sales that were made by Williams. I want to find the total of sales made by Williams. So the range here is the range. So from this, find Williams, and then the criteria is Williams. From this list, find Williams, and then from this one, calculate everything that is made by Williams. Let's see if it works. Okay, A2 to A4. Let's see, A2, A4, range, the criteria. Okay, let me fix this. Sum if the range, um, the range Okay, right. So with the sum if, so it's the sum, the name of the column. Select the field marked range. The field marked range. Right. So from this range, okay, this range, and then the criteria, Williams. Now the sum range, the sum range, and then okay. Why is it giving me this answer? Right, so in this range, Williams, let's see if I say before okay, and then the criteria cannot, okay, Williams, all right. Sum if the range, so from this one, I want Williams, and the sum range, let's see. Due to time, I think we will look at the sum if function in our next lesson. There's something wrong I am making with this function, but then we will fix this. So in our activity for sum if, the sum if, we have a spreadsheet called activity 9.3. This is a list for the spreadsheet. You can calculate the total sales of Vodacom airtime only. So you can calculate the sales. So in our next lesson, the first thing that we will do is to calculate the sales made for Vodacom. So here is the spreadsheet. Here is the spreadsheet. You must find out how many times did Vodacom, or find the question says calculate the total sales of Vodacom airtime only. So for Vodacom airtime only, Vodacom airtime. So in our next lesson, we will look at the sum if for this one, for Vodacom only. Right, so for Vodacom, Vodacom, we will calculate the total for Vodacom. What's wrong now? Ooh. Okay, so for Vodacom, right? So guys, that's it for today. I will look at this, calculate the total sales of Vodacom airtime only in our next lesson, right? So we'll start with this activity and then move to the next topic, right? So yes, thank you so much guys for joining, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I can't finish this activity due to time, but then in our next lesson I will finish it. Thank you so much guys, and bye.